What's up, everybody? Going to do a reading for the audiobook, Confusion in the Cosmos by Miguel Stephano, Decoding the Deception. This is going to be section 14, Roots of the Deception. And I guess I'll just kill some time until I see at least one person in the live stream, and that way I can at least get a mic check from you guys. I think we should be good. But again, so this is section 14, Roots of the Deception and Confusion of the Cosmos. All right, so first off, we'll quote Ephesians 5 and 6. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things, the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not be partakers with them. Most people who come to the understanding that the earth is comprehensively flat and enclosed will often ask the question, why would they lie? We're going to answer this question, and during the process, you'll glean many other things that will not necessarily be cosmology-based in order to see the bigger picture. Excuse me. This part will be a little different in nature by branching out through history into the fully chartered waters of deception at its roots. This part will be a process divided into 3 sub-parts consisting of ancient roots of deception, followed by modern roots of deception, and finally some conjecture on what lies ahead. What lies ahead, right? Are you ready? Let's begin. So first, the ancient roots of deception, the angelic realm. The angelic realm is extremely complex and very often misunderstood by most, and rightfully so. These heavenly spirits are very mysterious in nature, primarily because they're not fully explained to us, but we do know that references to the sons of God are always describing angels in the Old Testament. Let's start with how and why they were created and came into existence. First, Colossians 1 and 16, for by him and all things were created, both in the heavens and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. There has been much debate as to what day exactly during the creation account the angels were created, but the correct answer is they were already in existence during the 6-day account and likely for quite some time prior to that. We will elaborate more on this in part 16, but Job 38 talks about the angels singing for joy when God laid the foundations of the earth. Job 38 and 6, on what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? Again, that's Job 38. Although there is no way to know how many angels exist, in Daniel it's recorded thousands upon thousands and myriads upon myriads, while Revelation explains 10,000 times 10,000 or thousands of thousands. Quote in Daniel 7:10, a river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands were attending him, and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The court sat and the books were opened. Daniel 7. Then skipping to Revelation 5 and 11, and I beheld, and I heard the voice of many angels round about the throne, and the beasts and the elders, and the number of them was 10,000 times 10,000 and thousands of thousands. And for some time anyway, they all seem to be very loyal to the Creator. In Psalms, it says, Psalm 148:2, praise him, all his angels, praise him, all his hosts. We know that there are many different classes of angels, but biblically speaking, you really only find reference to the orders of cherubim, seraphim, and archangels. It also speaks of strange living creatures with multiple faces and multiple eyes, as well as thrones, dominions, principalities, rulers, spiritual powers, and authorities. Some of these can even take on the form of man. Hebrews 13:2, although most of these, Hebrews 13:2, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by this some have entertained angels without even knowing it. Again, that was Hebrews 13:2. Although most of these beings are obedient and do the important work of Yahweh, at some time in the past there was a fall that took place. When they were given a choice, a third of these angels rebelled to pursue their own interests and follow Satan, or the adversary. In Isaiah 14:12, it says, "How you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn. You have been cut down to the earth, you who have weakened the nations. But you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit on the mount of assembly in the recesses of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High." Again, that was Isaiah 14:12. So Satan was not created as Satan in name, but originally as Hillel in Hebrew. He was created as the most beautiful anointed cherubim angel that had access to the holy mountain of God and Eden, the original garden of God. But through his pride and desire to be equal to Yahweh, the Most High, he became the fallen adversary that we know by many names, including Satan, the devil, Beelzebub, and Lucifer. Let's look a little deeper at the meaning of these titles. Hillel is Strong's number 1966, meaning the shining one, the morning star, Lucifer, of the king of Babylon and Shaitan. And then devil in Greek is Strong's 1228, or diabolos, meaning slanderer or accuser of falsehoods. And if you guys watching, if you could throw a thumbs up in the thumb area there, if you can hear me okay. If you don't mind, I'd appreciate it. Beelzebul, or Beelzebub in Greek, is Strong's number 954, meaning a name of Satan, the chief of evil spirits. Okay, thanks, Rosie. Appreciate it. And then Satan roots from the Greek word Satanis, or Strong's number 4567, means the adversary, Satan, or the devil. So therefore, Satan is less of a name and more of a descriptor of his role as the adversary, by being a slanderer, accuser of falsehoods, a liar, and the chief of evil spirits. As you can see by these names or titles in the verses below, Hillel was created full of wisdom, perfect in beauty, and had the seal of perfection. We don't get a lot of information to understand all the details in its entirety, making this difficult to piece together and discern fully, forcing us to theorize. But let's look at more of the background story found in Ezekiel 28 and try to piece this together. So Ezekiel 28 and 13 through 19. You had the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering: the ruby, the topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the lapis lazuli, and the turquoise, and the emerald. The gold and the workmanship of your settings and sockets was in you. On the day that you were created, they were prepared. You were the anointed cherub who covers, and I placed you there. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked in the midst of the stones of fire. You were blameless in your ways from the day that you were created. until unrighteousness was found in you. By the abundance of your trade, you were internally filled with violence, and you sinned. Therefore, I have cast you as profane from the mountain of God, and I have destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom by reason of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I put you before kings that they may see you. By the multitude of your iniquities and the unrighteousness of your trade, you profaned your sanctuaries. Therefore, I have brought fire from the midst of you. It has consumed you, and I have turned you to ashes on the earth in the eyes of all who see you. All who know you among the peoples are appalled at you. You have become terrified or a terror, and you will cease to be forever. Again, that was Ezekiel 28, 13 through 19. What may not commonly be known or completely understood, however, is that Halel lost his standing before the throne of Yahweh, possibly as chief archangel, and was cast to the ground, being demoted. This demotion process caused him to lose his quote-unquote morning star and covering cherub status, along with his once perfect name of Halel. Being cast out of heaven sealed his fate to his detriment, but intriguingly, this demotion of status enabled Satan to become the god of this world, the prince and power of air, and the ruler of this world. What's so interesting is how much this parallels J.R.R. Tolkien's Silmarillion tales, right? Just saying, it's very close. If you've never read the Silmarillion, it's J.R.R. Tolkien stuff. Like, it's the lore that's way before Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and it's got like entire creation account and hierarchies of angels and fallen angels and stuff like that. So it's just interesting to parallel there. So skipping over to Corinthians 4:4, in whose case the small g, God of this world, has blinded the minds of the unbelieving, so that they might not see the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God, with the big G. Again, that was Corinthians 4:4. Ephesians 2:2, in which you formerly walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, of the spirit that is now working in the sons of disobedience. And then John 12:31, now judgment is upon this world. Now the ruler of this world will be cast out. And 1 John 5:19, we know that we are of God with a big G, and that the whole world lies in the power of the evil one. So if this author was asked to paraphrase this, he would say that in a nutshell, God said, really, Halel? You want to abandon what I created for you and be equal to me? Get out of here now, Satan, and go take over the earth, and let's see how you do with this. And then quoting Luke 10:18, he said to them, I was watching Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Now onto the Garden of Eden. Many people are familiar with the account of Adam and Eve's fall while in the Garden of Eden, when they were tempted by Satan through the serpent and ate the fruit of the only tree within the garden that they were not supposed to touch. But this author thinks the result of this act is when Yod-Heh Vav-Heh was giving consequences for their actions has gone sorely missed, and could possibly be one of the biggest keys in unlocking the entire Old Testament and the ultimate reason for Big G God to send forth a son. Let's go ahead and start reading through this account. So we're going to Genesis 2:15. Then the Lord God took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to cultivate it and keep it. The Lord God commanded the man, saying, quote, from any tree of the garden you may eat freely, but from the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat from it you will surely die. Genesis 2:15. Then going to Genesis 3, Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the beasts of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, "Indeed has God said, you shall not eat from any tree in the garden." The woman said to the serpent, "From the fruit of the trees of the garden we may eat, but from the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat from it or touch it, or you will die." The serpent said to the woman, "You surely will not die, for God knows that in the day you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good from evil." When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable to make one wise, she took from its fruit and ate, and she gave also to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loin coverings. They heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. Then the Lord God called to the man and said to him, "Where are you?" He said, "I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself." And he said, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree which I commanded you not to eat?" And the man said, "Well, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me from the tree, and I ate it." Then the Lord God said to the woman, "What is this you have done?" And the woman said, "Well, the serpent deceived me, and I ate." And again, that was Genesis 3:1. So this is the first recorded, quote unquote, deception that led to the fall of man. And this practice of deception has been Satan's modus operandi ever since. The effects of this initial deception performed through the serpent had the catastrophic effects of death, and Satan forever cemented his fame, becoming the father of lies. And then John 8:44, "You are of your father, the devil, and you want to do the desires of your father. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. Whenever he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own nature, for he is a liar and the father of lies." And I will just say, while I definitely have different interpretations of the same material, again, just reading for the audiobook. Anyway, earning his crown as the father of lies, John 8:44 speaks of him being a murderer from the beginning. There are no literal murderers being recorded as committed by him that we do not know of. Therefore, I believe this declaration of being a murderer from the beginning stemmed from his lie in the garden. He murders people through lies. Adam and Eve reached a death sentence for their sin as a result of being deceived by violating the only rule they had to follow, to not eat of one particular tree. This final death sentence was not immediate or instant, but sealed the fate of their mortality and severed their personal connection and direct relationship with the Most High. This death sentence would also be passed on to their offspring and the human race as a whole. I believe the instant they ate of this forbidden fruit, they died from their partial immortality state or initially created consciousness, allowing them to now see evil and experience everything that comes along with this. Instantaneously, their demoted and mortal bodies now felt pain, fatigue, stress, discomfort, and fear in their newfound degraded state of human consciousness. This fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil probably existed for other spiritual entities to eat that had access to the garden, but never intended for Adam and Eve. So Genesis 3:24, "So he drove the man out, and at the east of the Garden of Eden, he stationed the cherubim and the flaming sword, which turned every direction to guard the way of the tree of life." Genesis 3:24. So this author has read the book of Adam and Eve, and although we cannot trust it as truth, it is a very depressing story of two people that could never come to grips with their new physical reality and life outside of the garden. The rest of their lives were lived in shame, guilt, and remorse for the deception they allowed to take place by not heeding God's warnings. They complain throughout the read and constantly threaten and even attempt suicide more than once because they are so devastated with losing what they once had and could never recover from that. 1 Peter 5:7, be of sober spirit, be on the alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. The seed war commences. Aside from the punishments laid out to Eve, Adam, and the serpent, there was a final gauntlet laid out that also became the very first prophecy of a future Messiah. This was not only the first prophecy of a Savior to come, but also the start of a seed war that would continue for thousands of years. Genesis 3:15, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. God was addressing Satan with this proclamation, and the reader needs to understand what had just taken place here. This author cannot elaborate fully on everything about Satan having his own quote-unquote seed because we don't fully understand every aspect of that. But what this author does understand is this sin that was committed in the garden was a game changer for all of humanity. In this one sentence, God laid the claim that he would send forth a seed through Eve's offspring that will have the power to strike him down someday. Satan can only bruise his heel, but he will be able to bruise Satan's head. One of the challenges of writing this book was being limited to only using two different translations. There are many occurrences where other translations can better serve the point that needs to be emphasized for understanding. But for consistency purposes, he decided that he would only leave the KJV or NASB if it was really important in order to not cite from the position of cherry picking. That being said, let's look at a few of these other translations of Genesis 3:15 to see if this concept, more clearly. AMPC, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He will bruise and tread your head underfoot, and you will lie in wait and bruise his heel. Again, that's the AMPC translation. Then we'll go to the ERV translation. I will make you and the woman enemies to each other. Your children and her children will be enemies. You will bite her child's foot, but he will crush your head. Crushing your head, crush. The GW translation. I will make you and the woman hostile towards each other. I will make your descendants and her descendants hostile towards one another. He will crush your head, and you will bruise his heel. And then finally, the AMP translation. And I will put enmity or open hostility between you and the woman, and between your seed or offspring and her seed. He shall fatally bruise your head, and you shall only bruise his heel. So I hope this is more clearly understood within the context that the NASB doesn't say quite clearly enough. Satan knew that a descendant of the woman was coming to defeat him at some point, and that he would be powerless over this capital P person. He was limited to what he could do to this offspring, but this offspring will have the power to be able to crush his head. Satan was basically on notice and understood he only had a matter of time with his position as the prince and power of the air and lying ruler of this world. Next, we'll go to giants on the earth. This author believes the result of this Genesis 3:15 prophecy was perhaps the influence of Satan, who had tempted the angels that fell during the Genesis 6 incursion. We know that a third of the angels sided with Satan, and although not immediate, he sees it as a strong possibility that he tempted these watcher angels by viewing the human women as an opportunity for them to have their own children and develop their own nations. By causing these angels to lust after women, this would bring forth an army of his seed in order to prevent this opposing seed from coming forth through these women, as well as creating seed lines that would cause catastrophe against God's plan by corrupting his creation. This author thinks it's quite possible that Satan was also aware that the spawning of a hybrid race that would ensue from this interaction would result in him having an advantage within this seed war context. This advantage didn't last very long, however, and led to the flood of Noah that we covered earlier in the book. After only about 1,650 years since the six-day creation, this flood was sent to cleanse the earth from the evil seed that came from Satan's cohort fallen watcher angels, totally ruining God's intended laws of creation and the mandate of separation of kinds. Satan seemed to be winning for a while, but then God sent that flood to start over with the uncorrupted, pure seed of the humans and animals that were allowed on the ark to be saved by the flood. Then 1 Peter 3:20, when once the long suffering of Big G God waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was a preparing, wherein few, that is 8 souls, were saved by the water. Again, 1 Peter. Being quote unquote saved by water is telling of what would happen if God didn't intervene. After the flood, when the earth dried and grew back its vegetation and the population started multiplying once again, there became another big problem. Over time, something brought back more giants, creating many lands and races of post-flood giant hybrids, most often considered to be Rephaim as opposed to the pre-flood Nephilim. These giants are believed by researchers to have been shorter in stature than their larger pre-flood counterparts. No one knows for sure exactly how they came back again, but there are many that have postulated, including this author. These postulations most often are theorized as stemming from these basic possibilities. 1, a second post-flood fallen angel incursion. 2, through corrupted DNA from one of Noah's sons, Ham's wife. 3, the possibility of some giants somehow surviving the flood. 4, through the form of some ceremonial sex magic, demonically induced ritual. And 5, an unknown possibility that Satan caused to rebuild his army. Regardless of how Satan brought these strands of giants back after the flood, they existed once again, and this became a continuing war throughout the Old Testament for God's chosen warriors selected to fight them off, like Moses, Joshua, Caleb, Elhanan, and David, among others. Joshua 13:12, all the kingdom of Og in Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth and in Erdrei, he alone was left of the remnant of the Rephaim, for Moses struck them and dispossessed them. Deuteronomy 9:2, a people great and tall, the sons of the Anakim, whom you know and of whom you have heard it said, who can stand before the sons of Anak? And then Joshua 11:21, then Joshua came at that time and cut off the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, and from all the hill country of Judah, and from all the hill country of Israel. Joshua utterly destroyed them with their cities. Joshua 15 and 14, Caleb drove out from there the three sons of Anak, Sheshai and Achamin and Talmai, the children of Anak. 1 Chronicles 20 and 5, and there was a war with the Philistines again, and Elhanan, the son of Jair, killed Lahmi, the brother of Goliath, the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. Chronicles 20 and 8. These were descended from the giants in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. Finally, Amos 2 and 9, yet it was I who destroyed the Amorites before them, though his height was like the height of cedars, and he was strong as the oaks. I even destroyed his fruit above and his root below. Again, that was Amos 2 and 9. So many could not understand why the Creator, Yahweh, would send armies into lands with the orders to kill every man, woman, and child until genocide was sure and complete. This is another deception used by Satan in order to deceive people by accusing Yahweh of massacre and cruelty of extermination. But he omits the part about these evil abominations needing to be extinguished from the earth to further prevent a continual threat to the entire human race. These acts of genocide were, according to this author, a legitimate act of grace for humanity by God. But this narrative is used by Satan as an illusion for people to believe the Most High Creator is not loving, but a homicidal madman. And this narrative has unfortunately deceived many people and unfortunately has created more atheists than anything else. Demons in the making. For everything Yahweh had created, there was a plan of reconciliation, except for the fallen angels who left their habitation by sinning against the Creator and against the humans and animals on the earth. These wicked acts led these once immortal beings to ultimately die, ending in an eternal fire that will be prescribed on the day of judgment at the appropriated time at the end of the age. Until the end, these fallen angels are currently being imprisoned in chains in the lowest parts of Sheol. Jude 1 and 6 through 8. And angels who did not keep their own domain but abandoned their proper abode, he has kept in eternal bonds under darkness for the judgment of the great day, just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them, since they, in the same way as these, indulged in gross immorality and went after strange flesh, and are exhibited as an example in undergoing the punishment of eternal fire. Yet in the same way, these men also by dreaming defile the flesh and reject authority and revile angelic majesties. Job 4 and 18, behold, he put no trust in his servants, and his angels he charged with folly. 2 Peter 2, 4 and 5, 2 Peter 2 and 4 through 5. For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to pits of darkness reserved for judgment, and did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a preacher of righteousness, with 7 others, when he brought a flood upon the world of the ungodly. 2 Peter. So demons, unclean spirits, and evil spirits are all the same class of spirit and all derivative from Satan's hybrid seed program taking place on the earth. Demons, among these other descriptors, are not a separate entity opposite of angels, nor are they fallen angels either, like many believe. Enoch 15 settles this for us by teaching that these evil spirits are the disembodied spirits from the giants that were never predestined to exist. Upon the giants' death, their spirit will have nowhere to go and are thus forever banished to roam the earth without their bodies until their day of judgment. So we'll be quoting Enoch 15 again. And now the giants who were born from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies because they are born from men, and from the holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. As for the spirits of heaven, in heaven shall be their dwelling. But as for the spirits of the earth, which were born upon the earth, on the earth shall be their dwelling. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction upon the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst, and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. Enoch 15. This is explaining that due to the unholy union of the heavenly spirits, or the fallen watcher angels, and mortal females of the flesh, these hybrid abominations were never supposed to have existed, and upon physical death, their spirits with no place to go will therefore be tormented upon the earth, having all the same desires they had in the flesh, but no body to eat, drink, sleep, or fulfill their lusts, if you will, until they receive their punishment at the end of the age. Matthew 12:43, when the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walks through dry places, seeking rest and finding none. Again, that was Matthew 12. This is the reason why people become, quote unquote, demon possessed. These unclean spirits roam the earth looking for a suspect that often unknowingly grants them the spiritual authority to inhabit them. This is usually done from some kind of spiritual uncleanliness or occult practice that grants them the right to enter into a human, becoming a form of a parasite within the body. This went on from after the flood right up to the time of Yeshua, when Yeshua started healing people from these horrible demonic manifestations. Luke 4:36, and amazement came upon them all, and they began talking with one another, saying, "What is this message? For with authority and power he commands the unclean spirits, and they come out." They were all, that was Luke 4:36, and we got Mark 1:27. They were all amazed, so that they debated among themselves, saying, "What is this? A new teaching of authority? He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." Mark 1:27. And then finally, Mark 3:11. Whenever the unclean spirits saw him, they would fall down before him and shout, "You are the Son of God." Okay, so Mark 3:11. So even people today are still being possessed, oppressed, and spiritually violated by this unseen demonic realm, often unknowingly. This can be manifested through the form of constant lying, hardcore substance abuse, chronic illness, no concern for authority, spiritual deafness, and being unable to control their behaviors, among many other traits. It has become well known that by crossing certain lines within the spirit realm, this gives the authority for these spirits to come on through in the forms of incantations, enchantments, necromancy, and seances, to things as simple as playing with the Ouija board or having certain objects placed inside your home without understanding their representation or meaning. Although there are good spirits out there that are invisible to us, these don't become parasitic by inhabiting your body and have other duties for the good of the kingdom. Demons, evil spirits, and unclean spirits are not ghosts or spirits of people that have died, but are the invisible, disembodied spirits of the deceased giants and hybrids of old. Aside from these evil spirits becoming another component of Satan's army, Satan has his own line of seed through the people he was able to win over through deceiving them into joining his side. This started with Cain, son of Adam and Eve, who killed his brother Abel, to people like the wicked Enoch, Tubal-Cain, and many others. This continued after the flood, commencing with Ham, Canaan, and Nimrod, etc. 1 Timothy 5:15 says, "For some have already turned aside to follow Satan." So we'll move on to false gods with a small g. This seed deception continued on throughout many forms, but most consistently through the form of false small g gods and evil worship practices, most often in reference to Baal, Chemosh, Moloch or Moloch, and Ashtaroth. In Judges 2 and 13, it says, "So they forsook the Lord, or Yahweh, and served Baal and Ashtaroth." Judges 10 and 6, "Then the sons of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord, served the Baals and the Ashtaroth, and the small g gods of Aram, and the small g gods of Sidon, and the small g gods of Moab, the small g gods of the sons of Ammon, and the small g gods of the Philistines. Thus they forsook the Lord, Yahweh, and did not serve him." Judges 6 and 28, "When the men of the city arose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was torn down, and the Asherah, which was beside it, was cut down, and the second bull was offered on the altar which had been built." Jeremiah 32 and 35, "They built the high places of Baal that are in the valley of Ben Hinnom, to cause their sons and their daughters to pass through the fires of Moloch, which I had not commanded them, nor had it entered my mind that they should do this abomination, to cause Judah to sin." 1 Kings 11 and 7, "Then Solomon built a high place for Chemosh in the detestable idol of Moab, on the mountain which is east of Jerusalem, and for Moloch, the detestable idol of the sons of Ammon." 1 Kings 11 and 7. Finally, Leviticus 18 and 21, "You shall not give any of your offspring to offer them to Moloch, nor should you profane the name of your God. I am the Lord Yahweh." Consider, again, Leviticus 18 and 12. Consider the level of deception taking place when people become convinced that they need to offer their own child as a burning blood sacrifice to a false god who is demanding the blood of an innocent child in order to please them. The small g gods like Moloch required this worship by his followers, sacrificing their offspring to him on an altar. Some people can get a little freaked out by mentioning the word gods in plural, although this is always in the context of a lowercase g. Some feel that just the consideration of what this word means when used all throughout the Bible, and acknowledging that many have small g gods existed, may render themselves into a pantheistic pagan of some sort. But this need not be the case, because we're seeking for wisdom and understanding, so let's read it. Deuteronomy 32 and 8, "When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God." Deuteronomy 32 and 8. So Yahweh actually gave all the nations to the sons of God, or the angels, except for Israel. Israel is the only nation that he kept for himself, and Yahweh, the phrase God of Israel, is actually cited through the Bible over 1,000 times. The sons of Big G God are the immortal, shining ones within the different orders of the angelic realm, but could have also been another level or type of spiritual being charged with overseeing the earth. God, with a big G, gave his angels authority over territories, but they eventually messed this up as well. Simply stated, the basis of these false little g gods is angelic beings not doing their assigned work, but concerning themselves with misleading the public and doing evil. When this author says it's not this simple, there is a difference between the small g gods of old, charged with earthly responsibilities given by Yahweh, and the hybrid creations that were looked upon as gods by the humans who followed them to their peril. He thinks this is often overlooked today, but isn't this the reason for the first commandment being the very first one? First commandment being, you shall have no other small g gods before me with a capital M. Exodus 20:3. Let's read another overlooked aspect of an interesting account of a meeting which took place within God's divine council. God, with a big G, takes his stand in his own congregation. He judges in the midst of the rulers. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Selah, vindicate the weak and the fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and destitute. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them out of the hands of the wicked. They do not know, nor do they understand. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. And I said, you are small g gods, and all of you are sons of the Most High. Nevertheless, you will die like men and fall like any one of the princes. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for it is you who possesses all the nations. Again, that was Psalm 82, 1-8. So Yahweh is reprimanding these small g gods that he left to oversee the nations for not doing what they were charged to do correctly and misleading the people they were supposed to protect. Because they were given this responsibility and practice injustice to humans, they will now die like men in the end, as well as be judged by men also. 1 Corinthians 6:3, do you not know that we will judge angels? How much more matters in this life? Some people will actually be selected to judge angels. Let that sink in a minute. I can't say this is for certain, but the last verse in Psalm 82 above almost seems to infer that they lost their standing in a council, their responsibilities were negated, and all the nations went back to God. In consideration of all these things taking place regarding evil spiritual forces coupled with many forms of Satan's deceptions working in tandem, does this passage from Ephesians 12 start to speak more clearly? For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Since the resurrection of Yeshua ben Yosef, this author believes this seed war changed from trying to find and prevent the prophesied Messiah from coming forth into the only card trick Satan has left. Since he was unsuccessful at preventing the seed that would come forth and crush his head in the end, the only thing left for him to do is deceive the entire human population away from this Messiah named Yeshua and hide the truth as much as possible, including but not limited to Yeshua's own followers. In Matthew 7:13, enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life, and there are few who ever find it. Satan has infiltrated anything and everything of significance and owns the whole so-called global system. His intention is to lead everyone from the truth by utilizing lies and deception to lead astray as many as possible to that wide gate of destruction, being that final eternal destination in hell. This is all that Satan can do to thwart God's redemptive plan, and he has widened that gate to destruction by fooling so many people. Now that this author has given you a superficial background of the ancient roots of deception, we're now going to fast forward into the future of modern times by laying out some notable roots that have led us to where we are today, and finally conclude the chapter with some points on where he thinks this could be going. Although these are broader topics, I'm going to try to be as brief with each point as we can. Please feel free to research these points in more depth if you want to search deeper. The modern day, the modern day roots of deception. Do not participate in the unfruitful deeds of darkness, but instead even expose them. For it is disgraceful even to speak of the things which are done by them in secret. But all things become visible when they are exposed by the light, for everything that becomes visible is light. Ephesians 5 and 11. The heliocentric globe Earth. Ever since the beginning of time, it was believed that the Earth was the center of the universe. Some have postulated through the years about a possibility of the Earth being spherical, as opposed to the flat and enclosed cosmos that was understood since the ancients, but even these spherical theorists knew the Earth was still at the center. In the 1500s, a mathematician / astronomer came along named Nicholas Copernicus, who brought forth a controversial new theory, formulating the sun as being the center of the universe and everything else orbiting around it. Therefore, the new Copernican heliocentric theory was born, but not fully adopted until many years later as the officially approved theory that is taught even to this day. It took many smart men hundreds of years to reverse engineer the universe and build a model that could describe everything in direct opposition to the biblical account. This was required in order to advance Satan's counterfeit creation illusion, forever placing Copernicus as a scientific hero. The Illuminati. 1776 was the year that the United States received its independence from Britain, but it was also the same year that Jesuit-raised Adam Weishaupt founded the Order of the Illuminati. The Illuminati means the Enlightened Ones, comprising a new underground secret society that would consist of powerful and elite members all using a membership alias for anonymity, looking to influence the world affairs and change the way nations were run under subversive means. One of the original members was among the most powerful people of the day, Freemason Mayer Amschel Rothschild, the founder of the Rothschild banking dynasty, who agreed with Weishaupt on the idea of world revolution. There were many Freemasons involved in the founding of America, and believed by some that they used the book by Sir Francis Bacon, quote, The New Atlantis, as their blueprint for the United States, and due to his tremendous influence, some even considered Bacon as the real founder of America. Basically, they were looking to make America a new, powerful utopia and spread those principles to other nations with the end goal of a one world government system or a new world order through any means necessary. Most American patriots don't want to hear negative criticism against America's founding and would like to keep the mindset of America being founded as a Christian nation. But we're only seeing half of the story in this regard. The reality is that some of the founders wanted religious freedom and separation of church and state in order to protect their occultist beliefs and underground rituals so that the members of secret societies would have as much freedom as other more traditional belief systems. Secret societies have been around for thousands of years and are practiced all over the world. The oldest, the Brotherhood of the Snake, has since branched off into groups known as the Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Rosicrucians, the Knight Templars, the Knights of Malta, the Sons of the Golden Circle, Ordo Templi Orientis, the Jesuit Order, the Royal Society, and Skull and Bones, among many, many others. Some naively believe these are just good old boy groups, but when things are done in the dark and in secret, one should be suspicious of what's being hidden within these quote-unquote sworn to secrecy ceremonies and why. These branches have much power, money, and political influence, further spawned today's politically driven international groups like the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, or the CFR, the Trilateral Commission, members of the Bohemian Grove, and others. Despite having different viewpoints, opinions, and means to get there, secret societies all seem to share common end goals of a new world order system. Symbolism and metaphysics are very important to these esoteric societies, while often conveying a hidden meaning in plain sight. Symbols can be seen virtually everywhere, including our currency, government buildings, statues, monuments, and the street layouts in Washington, D.C. These are full of Freemason, Illuminati, and even satanic symbolism. It is believed that Adam Weishaupt was responsible for the all-seeing eye on top of the pyramid design, which adorns the back of our very $1 bill directly behind the Great Seal of the United States. It's said that this design represents the all-seeing eye of the so-called great architect of the universe, who will oversee the completion of the Novus Ordo Seclorum, Latin for New Order of the Ages, as stated directly below it on the dollar bill. Above the all-seeing eye reads Annuit Coptis, Latin for He has approved our undertakings. So the great architect is the deity known by Masons at the 33rd degree level as Lucifer, the light bearer. What about Jabulon too, right? We got a quote here from David Rockefeller. He says, this present window of opportunity during which a truly peaceful and interdependent world order might be built will not be open for too long. We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the new world order. David Rockefeller speaking at the United Nations Assembly, September 14th, 1994. Okay, so 1858, evolutionary theory. In 1858, Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace postulated the idea of natural selection through their theory of evolution, stating that species can change over time and all life is related and descended from a single common ancestor. And I'll add even plant life. So yes, you are distant cousins with broccoli. This means fish and flowers, bananas and birds are all related, and complex life forms are presumed to come from non-life forms by evolving over enormous durations of time. Even though this theory was outlined in Darwin's book On the Origin of Species, in 1859, it wasn't widely accepted until like the 1930s or even 1940s. In 1866, Ernst Haeckel had become one of the most effective popularizers of evolution by promoting Darwin's theory of evolution in Germany. Haeckel put forth sketched illustrations of comparisons between a fish, a salamander, a turtle, a chick, a pig, a cow, a rabbit, and a human at early stages in embryonic development. These sketches became convincing proof for evolution by showing how all the embryos looked almost identical in their early stages of development, being quite indistinguishable from one another, while also all having gill slits. These illustrations were later declared as a fraud by a professor in 1874, and it was claimed that there was a confession given by Haeckel admitting to the hoax. Despite all this, these images were still used in English language biology textbooks ever since as a proof of evolutionary theory. In 1997, Michael Richardson, a medical embryologist, knew something was wrong, so he assembled a team to collect, examine, and photograph embryos of 39 different creatures. After comparing the different embryos at different stages, the team concluded that not one of them resembled the drawings within the illustrations in the textbooks, proving again that Haeckel fraudulently changed the drawings from other scientists in his day to make the embryos all appear the same. This so-called scientific proof of evolution has now been proven a hoax twice. And despite all this, these images are still included in dozens of mandated textbooks still used in classrooms to this day. As of 2015, these fraudulent illustrations were still included in 36 biology textbooks used throughout the American school system, curriculums in every state. Could there be an agenda in place to hide the reality of a Most High Creator? Being there is no fossil evidence to support this evolutionary theory or its so-called missing links of transitional species, people have been fabricating them for over 100 years. Piltdown Man, Nebraska Man, Otabenga, Java or Pekin Man, Neanderthal Man, the Town Child, Ramapithecus, Australopithecus, Artie, and Lucy have all started as quote-unquote proofs for teaching children the so-called truth of transformational evolution. And yet every one of these has been proven to be rooted in scandal, falsification, and hoax. Yet this false teaching has taught millions of our children that this is our true origins and is still being taught in every public school today. Adolf Hitler said, quote, "Let me control the textbooks and I will control the state." Dinosaurs are not immune from these other fabricated hoaxes created to support an alternative creation theory. Dinosaur fossils started appearing during the mid-1800s when the whole evolution theorizing was just getting started. Most of these alleged bones were mostly discovered by two rival paleontologists who started, finding them after postulating the idea of the existence of dinosaurs and creating the word dinosaur, which had never existed prior to their time. There has never been a complete skeleton of any kind found, and most of the skeletons of dinosaurs are a model or an artist rendering made by designing a large reptilian creature around a single bone, or even a bone fragment, or even just a single tooth. All the skeletons available for viewing in museums are fabricated by sculptors. In fact, most of these are furnished to worldwide museums by the Zhejiang Dino Ocean Art Company in China. These experts in skeleton creations even use actual bone in their casted mixtures from deceased animals for higher authenticity. Their own website says that 62% of their output goes to American and European markets. We read in the Bible about some very strange and powerful animals referred to as the behemoth, Leviathan, or the dragon. There are ancient petroglyphs. Hold on, can you stop that, please? There are ancient petroglyphs and reliefs that show depictions of basic appearing dinosaurs, but nothing like the T-Rex or other fantasy-based creatures of which no real evidence has ever been found that proves that they actually existed. It is possible that something related to the rhino may have roamed the earth. However, as so much is hidden from us, this author believes that so-called dinosaurs were partly designed to promote evolution's theoretical narrative and as a way to hide dragons from the public. Dragons are memorialized by many cultures through legend and folklore from all over the world. 1910, Jekyll Island. The Federal Reserve is the banking system that implements the United States federal monetary policy that was created in 1913. As a precursor to this, there was a secret meeting held on Jekyll Island, located off of the coast of Georgia in 1910, that spawned the creation of this new central banking system by drafting the legislation incorporated into the 1913 Federal Reserve Act. The elitists of that mansion-sized cottage, along with other leisurely based amenities, calling it the Jekyll Island Club. At the turn of the century, this club was a main hangout for the wealthiest businessmen of the day, and J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller, among others, had their own private cottages at the club. Disguised under the ruse of a quote-unquote duck hunt, this covert meeting lasted for 10 days, was hidden from the public. Among the attendees of the meeting in 1910 were the Senator Nelson W. Aldrich, U.S. Treasury Department's Andrew Platt, and at least 5 of the country's richest men or leading financiers. The point of the meeting was to formulate the Federal Reserve as America's next central bank while authoring its structure and rules. So what was the significance of this island? Well, it was an ancient island once inhabited by Canaanite giants. Hidden beneath the island museum are several skeletons in the 8 to 8.5 foot tall range. Many of these cottages were built upon the ancient building foundations of antiquity's withered structures. However, the most troubling component of this story is that the building which housed these meetings was built on top of the Canaanite giants' sacrificial altar. Many think the Fed, or the Federal Reserve, is a governmental institution, but it's actually a private business controlling our money system that doesn't ever get audited. This new monetary system was put in place by the very people who profit from it the most, therefore creating a cartel right under everyone's nose. Did anyone realize that the architects of the Federal Reserve pulled from the occult energies of an ancient altar that sacrificed an untold number of children to their false small g gods of ancient times? Maybe this helps us understand why there is idolatry and occult symbols with deeper rooted meanings printed all over our currency to this very day. 1927, the Big Bang Theory. In 1927, a new theory was proposed to explain the possibility of evolution as an alternative to creation, inclusive of the universe expanding. Jesuit-trained Catholic priest, mathematician/astronomer George Lemaitre put forth the possibility of a cataclysmic explosion, creating the universe through his hypothesis of the primeval atom. This would later become known as the approved origin and starting point of the universe, an explanation that would eventually be called the Big Bang Theory. 1936, the founding of rocket programs. Jack Parsons, known as the father of rocket science, was the founder of JPL, or Jet Propulsion Laboratory, in 1936. Since JPL's inception, they have been involved with more than 125 NASA missions, many of these claiming to have explored the solar system and outer space. JPL is currently owned by NASA today and is charged with its current Mars Science Laboratory. Parsons was also a founding member of Aerojet Corporation and was so influential to the foundation of rocketry that he has a crater on the dark side of the moon named after him. Parsons, in his younger days, was obsessed with science fiction being promoted at the time through comic books and magazines, and he wanted to build rockets since he was just a little kid. Parsons ended up dropping out of college to pursue his dream of doing just that and experimented with rocket motors, propellants, and powders. He ended up receiving government contracts for research and development of rocket-related study and testing. Parsons was heavily involved in the occult, but converted to the newfound religion of Thelema in 1939, which again was developed by his spiritual mentor, Aleister Crowley, also known as the wickedest man in the world, who Parsons referred to as his most beloved father. Thelemic magic became Parsons' new obsession while also performing rocket testing at JPL. He joined the secret society of the Ordo Templi Orientis, or the OTO, and would, as often as possible, partake in drug-fueled, sexually charged rituals within his Millionaire's Row mansion in Pasadena, California. It is said that his house was always full of people, many wearing masks and wearing costumes, and frequented by witches, science fiction writers, scientists, and his occultist friends. One of these visitors was L. Ron Hubbard, who became good friends as they had much in common regarding science fiction, philosophy, and magic. Hubbard even moved into Parsons' mansion, and it was rumored that the two were sexually involved. You may remember L. Ron Hubbard as the founder of the religion Scientology. Hubbard and Parsons became so close, they even started performing Enochian magic rituals that they called Babylon working, designed to incarnate an actual goddess by impregnating magical tablets and eating menstrual blood cakes, among other things. I will leave the rest of the details out to spare us any further disgust. Parsons' death is surrounded in conspiracy, as it is alleged that he died while working in his lab while mixing chemicals in a can, causing a reactionary explosion. But everyone who worked with Parsons said he could never make a mistake of that nature and was meticulously careful with mixing compounds. Even though his death was ruled an accident, many suspect that Parsons was assassinated due to some evidence found at the scene and that the explosion was a government cover-up. Although there is much more to the story of Parsons, this is just a small note card version regarding the father of rocket science. 1945, World War II ends. The Germans surrendered in Western Europe on May 8, 1945, now known as VE Day or Victory in Europe Day. Japan also surrendered just 3 months later on August 14, 1945. Japan officially signed surrender documents on board the USS Missouri on September 2, 1945. Officially ending the war and arguably positioned the United States into military superpower status. Hitler was said to have committed suicide by gunshot to the head, while his wife Eva Braun died by cyanide capsule. Although Stalin was never convinced and even maintained that Hitler was still alive and possibly fled to Argentina, we were all told that with surety that he committed suicide. Then in 2009, his skull was analyzed by an archaeologist from the University of Connecticut, Nicholas F. Bellatoni, an Irish guy, who determined the skull thought to be Hitler's was actually the skull of a female under 40 years old. Could all the rumors surrounding Hitler's death have been untrue? Could the US government have lied to its citizens about Hitler's death even? Whatever happened to Hitler at the time, it is known that Hitler was deep into the occult and obtained many ancient artifacts from around the world. Among these were the Spear of Destiny, which was alleged to be the actual spear that was thrust into Yeshua's side while he was hanging on the cross. There are many things that have come to light about Hitler through the years. It was even claimed that Hitler was working with a superior subterranean master race called the Vril or the Vrilya, who helped give Hitler powers during the war and claimed they were going to rise and conquer the surface dwellers someday. This aspect remains a little foggy, but what seems to be clear is at the end of the war, based on what the United States found in Germany about things that Hitler was working on under the ground, above the ground, and at his base in Antarctica, a very interesting chain of events was started. 1945, United Nations is formed. The United Nations was officially signed and ratified on October 24, 1945. This date would be known and celebrated as United Nations Day. This organization is responsible for maintaining peace and security and is a center for harmonizing nations, while making it the largest and most powerful intergovernmental agency in the world, bar none. Headquartered in New York City, the UN was initially composed of 51 representative nations, but currently has 193 international state members. The only points this author is going to mention here are both in the emblem and the flag used by the UN, portraying the commonly known flat Earth map as their logo, which is interesting to say the least. But even more telling than this is the UN Parliament building in Strasbourg, France, which is obviously modeled after the unfinished Tower of Babel, as depicted from a 1563 painting from Pieter Bruegel the Elder, and he was a Flemish artist. So here's that UN Parliament building in Strasbourg. And it does look like that depiction of the Tower of Babel for sure. The Flemish artist, the rebuilding of the unfinished Tower of Babel just seems too conspiratorial, doesn't it? But what if their official motto is Europe, many tongues, one voice, or Europe, many tongues, one voice? This seems to me to be an additional indicator of the leaders showing us in plain sight that they want to get back to the days of Nimrod by a single ruling world government system. 1945, Operation Paperclip. Initially starting out as Operation Overcast and continuing under Operation Paperclip, the United States secretly imported about 1,600 to 1,800 members of Hitler's missile and rocket programs for employment within the American rocket programs. Along with the Nazi scientists, the United States also brought over about 3,700 family members. Among these recruits was Werner von Braun, member of the Third Reich Nazi Party and German SS. Despite this conflicting background, von Braun still became NASA's very first director on July 1, 1960, and he held that position until shortly after the first quote-unquote moon landing through January 27, 1970. This operation was justified by the reasoning that if the US doesn't take these scientists, then Russia will take them and become a larger threat than they are. Have you ever heard that NASA was founded with Hitler's own scientists? Plural, scientists? Does something seem wrong about crowning a Nazi member of our greatest World War II enemy as the first head of our American moon mission? Or maybe that was the point, find someone willing to help mislead and lie to the American public about their capabilities and use them to demonstrate the Earth is round by claiming to have a picture taken from the moon. It was said that von Braun became a Christian later on in life. This would seem to be emphasized by his gravestone, which may have been his way of revealing a final and yet subtle deathbed confession by reading, quote, Werner von Braun, 1912 through 77, Psalms 19:1. What is the significance of this passage, Psalms 19:1? Well, it says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Okay, 1946 through 1947, Operation High Jump. After previous expeditions to the Arctic and Antarctic regions, there was curiosity as to Hitler's own fascination with Antarctica. Operation High Jump was an expedition to Antarctica led by Admiral Richard Byrd in 1946 through 47 by utilizing 4,700 military troops, 33 planes, and 13 ships. High Jump was the name of the operation due to Antarctica having sheer ice walls a couple hundred feet tall to scale up from sea level. The primary mission of the operation was said to establish an American research base, but Byrd's expedition was oddly and abruptly cut short by 6 months without good explanation other than claiming bad weather conditions, and the remaining fleet was brought back home. What was found in Antarctica during this expedition, causing early abandonment of the mission and eliminating the need to go back, even necessitating a worldwide treaty banishing everyone to go there, or banishing everyone from going there. As mentioned in a previous chapter, some believe Byrd encountered aliens per his alleged diary, and others believe his team found the actual firmament itself. Maybe even both? Perhaps we'll never know. 1947, then we have the Roswell crash. On July 7th, 1947, an airborne object said to be a flying saucer crashed in the desert on a range just north of Roswell, New Mexico. It was reported on July 8th by Roswell Army Airfield through a press release that a, quote, flying disc had crashed on the ranch during a powerful storm. Although unclear and controversial to this very day, it was alleged by credible witness accounts and witnessed by military personnel that there were bodies of dead aliens and one said to be still alive, which were removed from the crash site and taken to some undisclosed location. These initial reports were changed the following day when the government claimed it was a weather balloon that was retrieved, and they have never changed their story until an inquiry in 1994 after much public pressure for answers. Their new response was changed to the event being part of a top secret project called Project Mogul, which was a project placing audio microphones at high altitudes to monitor and record nuclear bomb blasts. And they claimed the bodies recovered from the site were just crash test dummies. Since then, others have stated that Project Mogul was not in effect until after the incident took place and claim that it's just more disinformation added on top of an old cover-up. 1947, Project Majestic 12. Project Majestic 12 was a, quote, higher than top secret program formed by classified executive order by President Truman in 1947. This project consisted of 19 individuals that were handpicked, trusted, and unknown to the public in response to increasing extraterrestrial activity in order to facilitate recovery and investigation of alien crafts. But aren't the objects of these crashes weather balloons? 1947, the CIA is formed. The Central Intelligence Agency was created on July 26, 1947, through the National Security Act, giving power to conduct foreign intelligence operations. This organization is thought to be a foreign soil related, but many activities are carried out under various covers and front companies that they either create or acquire for special covert and often illegal operations. Some have alleged that this agency was also formed for the purpose of concealing the alien cover-up in order to control the information to ensure its continued secrecy. 1947, also we get the Department of Defense. Founded in September of 1947, the Department of Defense, or DoD, was formed to coordinate and supervise all agencies and functions of the U.S. government relating to its armed forces and national security. Their headquarters would be stationed inside the newly built Pentagon building in Washington, D.C. 1948, Israel becomes a nation. After almost 2,000 years, on May 14, 1948, at midnight, Israel officially became an independent state. This fulfilled several biblical prophecies regarding the Jews once again attaining their land after being banished from the land. Ezekiel 36 and 24, for I will take you from the nations, gather you from all the lands, and bring you into your own land. I will put my spirit within you, and you will come to life, and I will place you on your own land. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken and done it, declares the Lord. Again, that was Ezekiel 36 and 37. 1948, Project Sign. After commissioning the Air Material Command, or AMC, to study the growing phenomenon of UFOs being reported in 1947, General Nathan F. Twining, the AMC head, wrote in his mission's conclusion, the phenomenon reported is something real and not visionary or fictitious. This launched Project Sign in 1948 to be undertaken by the United States Air Force as a governmental study of UFOs and flying saucers. 1949, we got Project Grunge. Succeeding Project Sign, Project Grunge would take over with the investigating of UFO reports. This new project would operate as a debunking directive and conduct little to no investigation while reporting that all UFO reports were being thoroughly reviewed. 1950s, Operation Mockingbird, the official date of when this program started is unknown, but believed to have started in the early 1950s. Operation Mockingbird was a CIA project which recruited American journalists into a propaganda network. Journalists and reporters were put on the payroll and even blackmailed into joining this network while being instructed to write fake stories to spread disinformation. This disinformation would spread organically by others citing the report that would be repeated throughout the media. Could this be the root of fake news? 1952, we get UFOs over Washington, D.C. During the summer of 1952, several UFO sightings were reported over the Capitol in Washington, D.C. These strange, glowing aerial objects were reported as orbiting the White House and Capitol building as hundreds of witnesses took notice. Even air traffic controllers spotted these objects on their radar. Edward Nugent worked at Washington National Airport as an air traffic controller and spotted 7 objects on the evening of July 19th and wrote, quote, "We knew immediately that a very strange situation existed. Their movements were completely radical compared to those of ordinary aircraft." Others could see these objects by looking right out the control tower window, claiming they could do a 90-degree turn quickly. Among those, Howard Coughlin, another air traffic controller, said, quote, "We saw objects doing maneuvers that an airplane wouldn't do, and it was going over 1,000 miles an hour." The U.S. government's official explanation of these events was purported as a rarely occurring atmospheric temperature inversion series of events, while the FAA's explanation was swamp gas. 1952, we got Project Blue Book, the third study of its kind conducted by the United States Air Force investigating UFOs. But wait, I thought it was a temperature inversion, right? Project Blue Book had 2 objectives. 1, to scientifically analyze UFO-related data. 2, to determine if UFOs were a threat to national security. Although the most sensitive information would be handled by Majestic 12, for its duration, Blue Book collected 12,618 UFO reports and concluded that most of these were classed as misidentifications of natural phenomenon and conventional aircraft. 1953, Project MK Ultra. Project MK Ultra began under CIA Director Alan Welsh Dulles on April 13, 1953. MK Ultra was a code name used for the CIA mind control program that performed experiments on human subjects by using illegal methods and means. Using U.S. and Canadian citizens as unwitting subjects, numerous methods were used to manipulate people's brain functions and mental states, often causing permanent injury and sometimes even death. Many illegal activities were utilized, including high doses of psychoactive drugs like LSD and mescaline, hypnosis, electroshock, sensory deprivation, verbal and sexual abuse, isolation, and many other forms of practically torture. MK Ultra's project scope was very broad, with research being conducted at 80 different institutions, including universities, prisons, hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, and secret detention centers. And this phone is about to die. Yeah, that's just way too much for a chapter. Yeah, so what I'm going to have to do, guys, because my phone is about to die, I'm going to have to go ahead and cut this off here and continue with section 14 as an appendage, because I don't think I can read it anymore right now anyways, but my phone is literally about to die. So thanks so much for watching, hanging out with me. I do appreciate and love you guys. Again, this was Confusion in the Cosmos, section 14A. And the next one I do, I'll continue with section 14B, and we'll pick right up with Project MK Ultra in 1953. Definitely my favorite chapter insofar, although it's just too much for right now and I can't continue. So thank you guys for watching. Love you, and I'll see you in the next one. If you would like to support our channel effort, there's links below. Cash App, Patreon, PayPal, Venmo, all under TheMorgile. And I do want to thank the few of you guys that helped. I was able to pay another week at the hotel. So that's all good for now. Thank you very much. And see you very soon in the next one. Bye.